Have you ever had that feeling deep in your gut that something is just off? That tingling on the back of your neck when you're alone in a dark room? Tonight, we're going to explore that feeling. We're diving into stories that start out normal, maybe even a little boring, but end with a twist so chilling you'll be checking over your shoulder for days. These aren't your typical jump scare stories. These are tales of unexpected horror, the kind that seeps into your mind and stays there long after the lights are back on. So, get comfortable, turn down the lights, and prepare for a journey into the shadows, where nothing is ever as it seems. Our first story begins with a young couple, Leo and Clara, who bought their dream home. It was an old Victorian house, a real fixer-upper, but it had character. They spent months renovating, pouring their love and savings into every room. The only part they hadn't touched was the cellar, a damp, stone-walled space with a heavy bolted door. The previous owner had left a strange note: "Don't unbolt the cellar, ever." They laughed it off, assuming it was a quirky joke. But as the months went by, strange things started to happen. They'd hear faint scratching sounds from below the floorboards at night. Sometimes, a strange, sweet smell, like rotting flowers, would drift up from the basement. Clara wanted to call someone, but Leo, ever the pragmatist, insisted it was just old pipes or rats. One evening, while Leo was out of town for work, Clara was home alone. The scratching was louder than ever, more frantic. It sounded less like an animal and more like fingernails on wood. Terrified, she barricaded her bedroom door and tried to sleep. The next morning, she went down to the kitchen to find the heavy bolt on the cellar door completely undone, lying on the floor. The door was slightly ajar. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She called Leo, her voice trembling, and told him what happened. He tried to calm her down, promising to be home by nightfall. He told her to stay out of the cellar and wait for him. But curiosity, mixed with a healthy dose of fear, got the better of her. She had to know what was down there. Grabbing the heaviest flashlight she could find, she pushed the cellar door open and slowly descended the creaking wooden stairs. The air grew cold and thick, the sweet, sickly smell overwhelming. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing stone walls covered in strange, swirling symbols. At the far end of the cellar, she saw it. A small, wooden rocking horse, gently swaying back and forth on its own. It looked ancient, the paint chipped and faded. As she got closer, she noticed something tied to its handle with a red ribbon. It was a small, silver locket. Her breath caught in her throat. She recognized it. It was the locket her grandmother had given her, the one she'd lost years ago as a child while playing in the woods behind her old family home, hundreds of miles away from here. How could it possibly be here? As she reached out to touch it, the cellar door slammed shut above her, plunging her into total darkness. Then, from the corner of the room, she heard a child's whisper, "You found me. Let's move on to our next tale." This one follows a group of 4 friends, Maya, Ben, Chloe, and Sam, on their annual camping trip. They were experienced hikers, always seeking out remote, beautiful locations. This year, they chose a spot deep in a national forest, famous for its ancient, towering trees and eerie silence. After a long day of hiking, they set up their tents by a serene, glass-like lake. As night fell, they sat around the campfire, sharing stories and laughing. The forest was unusually quiet. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just the crackle of the fire. Chloe, who was always a bit superstitious, mentioned an old local legend about the forest. The story said that the woods would sometimes copy things, a sound, an object, even a person, creating a perfect, but soulless replica. The others just rolled their eyes and told her she was trying to spook them. Later that night, Maya was woken by a sound outside her tent. It was Ben, calling her name softly. "Maya, come look at this. You won't believe it." The moon was gone, and the stars were arranged in constellations she had never seen before. It was beautiful but deeply unsettling. She called out to Chloe and Sam, but there was no answer from their tent. Ben just smiled, a wide, empty smile that didn't reach his eyes. "They're sleeping," he said. "It's just us." An icy dread washed over Maya. Ben was right-handed. The man standing in front of her was gesturing with his left hand, and the small scar above his right eyebrow was gone. This wasn't Ben. She remembered Chloe's story about the forest that copies things. She backed away slowly, her mind racing. "I'm just going to grab my jacket," she lied, her voice shaking. She ducked back into her tent, fumbling for the zipper on the other side. She had to get away. As her fingers closed around the zipper pull, she heard footsteps approaching. Then she heard Chloe's voice from right outside, sweet and calm. "Maya, what are you doing?" "Ben's waiting for us by the lake." Maya froze. She peeked through a small gap in the tent flap. Standing next to the fake Ben was a perfect copy of Chloe. Then, behind them, emerging from the other tent, was Sam's replica. They all stood there, motionless, by the edge of the water, their heads tilted in perfect sync, their empty eyes fixed on her tent. The real Ben, Chloe, and Sam were nowhere to be seen. The forest had copied her friends, and now it seemed it wanted to copy her too. The zipper on her tent began to slowly, silently unzip from the outside. Our final story for tonight is about a man named Thomas, a dedicated archivist working in the basement of a sprawling city library. He loved his job, surrounded by the smell of old paper and forgotten history. His current project was cataloging a collection of unclaimed items from the library's lost and found, some dating back decades. Most of it was junk old scarves, single gloves, cheap umbrellas. But one day, he found a small leather-bound diary at the bottom of a dusty box. It had no name, and the first entry was dated 50 years ago to the day. The handwriting was elegant, telling the story of a lonely reader who found solace in the library's quiet halls. The diary entries were mundane at first, describing books read and people observed. But as Thomas read on, he noticed a strange pattern. The diarist described someone who sounded exactly like Thomas's predecessor, a man named Arthur who had retired a few years back. The diary detailed Arthur's habits, his favorite reading spot, even the brand of tea he drank. Thomas was intrigued. He continued reading, his work forgotten. The diary entries became more and more detailed. It described the day Arthur announced his retirement and the small party the staff threw for him. Then the entries shifted. The diarist started describing a new archivist. The descriptions matched Thomas perfectly: his scruffy beard, his habit of humming while he worked, the worn-out sweater he was wearing that very day. A cold chill ran down his spine. This was impossible. The diary was 50 years old. How could it describe him? He flipped frantically to the last few pages. The entries detailed his current project, cataloging the lost and found. It even mentioned him finding the diary. His hands trembled as he turned to the final page. The entry was dated for today. It read, "He's reading this now. He's finally found me. Soon, he will put me back in the box, and my way will begin again." I do so love watching the new archivists. Thomas looked up from the diary. The basement was silent and empty, but for the first time he felt like he wasn't alone. He felt a pair of unseen eyes on him, watching, waiting. He slowly closed the diary, his heart pounding. The story wasn't over. He was now a part of it. From a mysterious cellar to a forest that mimics life, to a diary that writes the future, these stories show us that horror isn't always about monsters with claws and fangs. Sometimes, the most terrifying things are the ones that quietly defy all logic, leaving us to question our own reality. The things that make you wonder, what if? What if that strange noise isn't just the house settling? What if that person you know so well isn't quite right? What if your story has already been written by an unseen hand? Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unexpected. If you enjoyed these tales, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories from the shadows. Sleep well. If you can,